Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon, and I'm your host today. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that I didn't think I was going to have as much fun with as I did, but I had an enormous amount of fun, and it's equipping the budget workshop. This is episode 100 of Pod Save Chocolate. And so when I think about the episodes of Pod Save Chocolate, The Chocolate Life Live, and The Chocolate Life on Clubhouse, I'm at 400 episodes in the last couple of years, which is really quite astonishing when I think about it. But it's all because of you, right? I'm doing this because it's you guys are actively supporting the work that I do, and I have fun, and it gives me an opportunity to go and research topics that I might not ordinarily have an interest in researching. And it gives me an opportunity to talk through my thoughts. So people who know that my hearing myself say things is a really important component of my process. Now, if you're out there watching live, please go into the live chat on YouTube or in the comments on LinkedIn or Facebook. Let me know where in the world you're connecting from, and I'll get that up on screen. Right. And if you have a comment or a question about anything that goes on over the course of the upcoming hour or so, put them in the comments, and I will get the question or comment up on screen, and I will get it asked, and I will do my best to answer it during the course of the hour. And if I can't answer it during the episodes, I will add it to the comments for this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. So speaking of which, this is the episode or the post on the Chocolate Life for this episode. I do a post like this for every episode, and the links and resources are on this page. So you don't have to follow all that closely along with what it is that I'm doing. Or if you're listening to an audio version, you can listen to the audio version and follow along and see all of the resources that I talk about during the course of the episode. This is the homepage of the Chocolate Life. Right now, this is live, right? And just a quick note that April 5th and 6th is the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Fest. And then we have March 21st through 23rd is the Salon du Chocolat in New York City, and Chocoa is over. So lots of stuff that's going on to pay attention to. But very, very quickly, just a quick shout out from Mark and Yuri at Blue Spruce Chocolates. Congratulations on the 100th episode. Thanks, guys. I really do appreciate it. You guys have been supporters of the work that I'm doing. You're actually premium members of the Chocolate Life, and I appreciate that support. And you're also one of the regular participants in the monthly AMA calls. And this coming Sunday is the monthly AMA. If you're a member, you can go to the Chocolate Life and you can find the link to participate in the AMA, which begins at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time on Sunday the 16th this month. So do that. I expect to be super busy today. I'm glad to hear that you're super busy, even though it's Valentine's Day, I suppose. People are making last minute decisions. So that's pretty cool. I enjoyed episode 99. And I would be really interested in knowing, Mark, if you get the chance between customers, what you thought was the single most surprising thing that I said in episode 99. I would be really, 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 really interesting to note. But in any event, what I want to do is I want to talk about episode 100. So episode 99 was about building the ultimate chocolate and confectionery workshop. Money is no object. I can spend as much money. And for three key items in this, I think that I would have spent close to 400,000 euros. Just to give you an idea of the kinds of money we're talking about. And so what I wanted to do is that same thing again, but okay, budget is a concern. I just can't go out and spend as much money as I want, right? I was thinking, okay, how am I going to do this on a constrained budget? But then what I said, all right, what I'm going to do to make it more interesting is I'm going to say I'm running a retail operation. I'm running in my own retail operation as well. And so what I want to do is I want to create not only, chocolate for chocolate bars and for panned items and things like that, but I want to give people a reason to come in the shop for things other than just chocolate bars. And then I also want to be able to create products for sale in warm summer months. So I'm thinking about how do I go about doing this year round, right? And how do I provide products? How do I create products? How do I make products, produce products which are going to give people more than one reason to walk into the store? And so that's my rationale today. I added that in, right? So, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. More fun when I added that retail component in. Not that I'm really excited about the idea of running a retail operation, but it added a layer of complexity to it when I went and thought about what it is that I wanted to purchase. Right, but let's start off with I organized it the way I did last time. Number one, equipment for making chocolate. Right, so the number one thing is I want a good cocoa roaster. Right, and so Coffee Tech is a company that I've admired from afar for a long time. This is their R15. It's relatively compact. At a 15-kilo roaster, I think I calculated that at 8 roasts per week in this machine, I could produce enough nibs for at least 170-kilo batch of dark chocolate and 170-kilo batch of a high cocoa content milk chocolate in 8 roasts in this device. Now, apart from everything else that it's got, I mean, it's like you can get it fully loaded, and I would purchase the fully loaded version of this because once I get a roast down, I can automate the roasting, which I think is really important. But this machine also has an optional destoner. So if I want to get rid of things that would ruin a refiner, I can add a destoner to it. And so I think that's really, really important. I don't have to buy a separate cleaner, right, and put it someplace else. So that's going to reduce the amount of space that I need. And usually, if you're doing things like cleaning and destoning, you want to have it in a separate room so any of the dust that gets kicked up doesn't travel throughout the rest of the workspace. Certainly, you want the separate air handling, right? Because again, so you don't want any of the dust which is kicked up by that. So this R15 cocoa roaster from Coffee Tech in Israel would be my first choice for a drum roaster, right? Now, the next thing is going to be a little controversial, right? And actually, perhaps a lot of controversial. And that is there's an Italian company called Conversitech. And what they do is, believe it or not, this thing here is a chocolate refiner. You throw the nibs and sugar in the top, right? There is a set of rollers, right, which are tightened against the inner wall with a spring that provide the pressure to refine the nibs and the sugar and other ingredients into chocolate. These things are small, which is good. They're not so they're small, but they also include a conch built in. So you can heat these things up to 70 degrees centigrade. You can blow air through it. So I have in here a conch refiner, right, which is like a universal, but it doesn't have the same noise and wear challenges that a regular universal does. Right? You can see, oh, this one comes with a glass fronted door, which is cool. And I can swap out steel and Teflon rollers on this thing. So I could go back and forth between cocoa and doing nut pastes in the same machine. So very, very cool. Now, this is a 15-kilo batch machine. They do make a 60-kilo batch machine. And this is a spec sheet. So this is their current product sheet. It's in Italian and English. And so what I would do is I would get 2 of these R60s. So I would have an R60, which is dedicated to milk, an R60, which is dedicated to dark. If I can produce 2 batches a week, it says 60 at 70 kilos of cocoa. I can produce 2 batches a week, right? So I've got a lot of production capacity in a relatively small amount of space, and these things are quiet. And it is a conch refiner, right? So I can refine everything, and when I get done in the process, I can be blowing hot air across this in order to speed up the conching process. So instead of taking 2 to 3 days, if I can do 2 batches per week of 70 of a dark and 2 batches per week of milk, that's 280 kilos a week. Right there, right, which is pretty cool. So I would get 2 of these R60s. Again, integrated refiner conches is the best way to think about it. And then I would get 1 of the R15s for white chocolate. And because I'm talking about a retail environment, I would get this little teeny R7 up front of house at the point of retail. And what I would do is I would show this to people. People would be able to watch this going. It wouldn't be hot. It would be set at around 45 degrees centigrade. So I wouldn't have any airflow. I wouldn't be conching with it or anything like that. But what I could do is I could show people the process. This is exactly how we make the chocolate, and I could sample from this, right? So I think this is really cool. Now, these things, if you just think about this compared with a straight melanger of the same capacity, they're more expensive. But if I were to go and say, oh, I want to compare this against the same sized, I'm going to say DCM, Diamond Custom Machines melanger, which has the rapid refiner and the pneumatic pressure attachment, these things are incredibly cost competitive here. So I think that they may be less expensive and take far less time than it would take if I were doing this in a conventional melanger. They're easier to clean. It's not obvious here, but I could take out this entire assembly here and put it in the dishwasher. So I can wash these things, right, and clean them incredibly easily. So, wow. I mean, these are amazing things, all right? I really, really love them. And one of the reasons why I love them is that when I was working with FBM, and after we had done the Kligo and we were thinking about what would a melanger look like, we actually thought about doing this vertically in a melting tank, right? So I think the horizontal version is actually much better in many respects. But this is, going back to 2013, 2014, doing something like this was on my brain. And I'm glad that Andrea and the team at Conversitech has done this. I think it's really, really cool. If I'm worried about small space, I'm worried about, these are fabulous. And as I say, if I were to get a melanger, I would like to have the DCM as a preferred brand of melanger. I would like to have the rapid refiner. I would like to have the pneumatic cylinders on it, and making these incredibly cost competitive. But I just love the idea of having one of these sitting on the counter and being able to share product with people. So I think they're really cool. Now, going along with that, it's also, if I were to say, okay, again, I like what it is that Diamond Customs Machines is doing, melangers.com. I like their Breeze cracker and winnower. I know, Mark, you guys at Blue Spruce have one of the small ones, right? But I'm going to go with this cracker and winnower, which is the MI30. It's a 30 kilo per hour machine. And one of the reasons why is that it will work not only with cocoa beans, but it will also work with nuts. Right. So if I want to process pistachios, I want to process hazelnuts, I want to do things, this machine will do both nuts and cocoa beans. And that's one of the reasons why I want it. Rather than having two cracker winnowers or a dedicated cracker for cocoa and something separate for nuts, this is the way that I would go if I were kitting out a shop. And again, I'm not worried at all about, I'm not worried about being allergen free, right? Gluten free perhaps, but not nut free. And certainly not dairy free. So think about all of those kinds of things. This is just, it is remembering this. I had last spoken with Andrea Conversi almost exactly this time last year about these products, because I had become aware of them for one reason or another. And I reached out to him a couple of days ago and I said, what's going on? And he said, we've been doing a lot of work on these. And so this sort of drove everything when it comes to the chocolate making side of things. So we have the R15 refiner. We have a small, the M10, as well as the M30 cracker winnower. Again, this will work with nuts in addition to cocoa beans. And so I think it's a really, really great combination. It's price competitive. It's high performance. It gives me a lot of capabilities. Again, if I have one of these R60s dedicated to dark and one to milk, right, I can produce, if I'm running this twice a week, I can produce 280 kilos of chocolate an hour. If I got one dedicated to white, I have 340, 350 kilos of chocolate a week, right, without trying hard, which is a lot, right? So in that respect, it's price performance. I think it's a great option. So really quickly, going back to the previous question, Mark, you were blown away by the multiprocess R, the mini line by Technotray. We've already downloaded the spec seat. We'd love to see the bad boy in operation. So, Mark, there is a U.S. sales representative. I don't know where they demonstrate this. And I know that there may be a demo line somewhere in the United States. If you're really interested, I can connect you. But I can tell you that the machine, the 50 kilo, or even the 25 kilo machine with 4 or 5 of the cartridges to, so you could have one dedicated dark one, is like going to be over 200,000 euros. So just to set expectations. But if you're interested, let me know. They're fun to watch. I've only seen them working at Chocoa. So that's where I saw it for the first time. Elmer, it's Valentine's Day. Elmer's with Yohoa Chocolate in Honduras. Thank you very much for checking in, Elmer. And it is Valentine's Day. I hope everybody has got someone that's special that they can share the day with. And a quick shout out from Mike King at Encore Coffee and Chocolate. And I want to say, Mike, I had in Kansas City, number one, everybody I knew was an Eagles fan. So they're all happy that the way the game went last weekend, you may be crushed or not. And I just had an interesting conversation with somebody yesterday about being in Kansas City. So there's a chance I may be in Kansas City sooner rather than later, which would be great to catch up again. So pretty cool. Anyway, so you've done that. If you want to, this sheet, you can download. This brochure you can download if you're interested in learning more. I'm speaking with Mr. Conversi. I should have all of the pricing for North America on Monday. And so if something like this interests you, let me know. And I'll be able to help get the product to you. So just to let you know, or put you in touch with the people at Conversi about doing it. Now, one of the things which is sort of maybe not so great about these machines is they do require cold water for chilling. And so you're going to want a small water chiller. And this Rapid 50 water chiller should be enough for the machines that I mentioned, even if you're running them simultaneously. But you will require a recirculating chiller unless you're on a well and you have unlimited amounts of water and you can just run the water and then run it back into the well. Right? If you're on a municipal line and you have a monthly water bill, you may think twice about using water once and flushing it down the drain. Right? So another thing that I want for processing, right, is I want to have a 3-roll mill. And the 3-roll mill is, among other things, I can make gianduja specifically and spalmabile, which is a thinner spread, a gianduja-like spread, on a machine like this. But the major thing for me is that if in case for any reason I need more production capacity in one of these refiner conches, what I can do is I can process the cocoa nibs through the 3-roll refiner, mix the sugar in, and then process it back. So I'm cracking the sugar into the nibs in the 3-roll refiner, and then put this into the refiner conch. And so I can, by pre-refining the sugar into the nibs, by crushing the sugar into the nibs, I can reduce the amount of time that this thing needs to spend refining in the refiner conch. And so having this 3-roll mill gives me the flexibility of producing a lot of high quality nut paste items, right? Simultaneously, I can be producing these nut paste items at the same time my refiner conches are working on making chocolate. So yay, that's a good thing, right? But if I ever need to, what I can do is I can spend an hour putting together all of the ingredients for a batch in one of the R60s. I mean, literally. And then I can cut in half or more the amount of time this thing spends in the R60, which is I can go and more than double production in the same footprint just by having this machine. So it provides me flexibility and it provides me an alternative production pathway, which is going to enable me to grow production significantly. So real quick, Mike, did I set a budget for this budget workshop? The answer is no, I did not set a budget for the budget workshop. I did say in the overview for this is my goal here is not to look at kitting out my workshop for the least amount of money. I didn't say what is the smallest budget that I can think of? I'm going to buy one tiny cracker winnower. I'm going to buy one tiny melanger. I'm going to buy um, one tiny tempering machine. That's not, like a tiny roaster. That was not the way I wanted to set up the business, because I don't think it's possible to create a profitable business, right? When you think about the budget that way, right? So it's a great question. I didn't set up a budget. What I can do is, once I can give you an idea about what the spend would be, right? But I think importantly here, what you can go is, are there alternatives for some of the things I've suggested that you might do differently, right? So, but if I were to set up a chocolate business of my own with a retail storefront, right? And what I was doing was wanting to have an online wholesale business, another kind of wholesale business, and my online retail and direct to consumer in store business. This is how I would do it, right? Again, not the least expensive way to do it, but that wasn't my intent, right? I've seen people say, I want to set up a chocolate business and I have $25,000 to spend on equipment. What can I buy with $25,000 and try to set up a business? I think you're just setting yourself up for a world of pain and a world of hurt if you think that way, right? So that was not what I wanted to do. I've seen a lot of people do this, is like, if I'm setting up my own business, what am I going to do? Right. And I don't have $1.5 million or $2 million to spend on equipment, which is, I had 4 pieces of equipment in there. I said 3 I had 4 pieces of equipment in there. And, between the, between the two Techno Tray machines, the Robo Cubo and the Loreca machine, it was €500,000 just with those 4 things, right? So I wanted to be a little more price sensitive in this particular case, but folding in retail, which is really, really important, right? So let's talk about what I want to do for making chocolate confectionery. So rather than getting the relatively expensive Robo Cubo, which I believe is French, there's an Italian company called Firex that makes this thing called the Cucci Mix, right? And you know what? I do not want to enter the fire lab, but the Cucci Mix is very, very similar in many respects to what the Robo Cubo is, less sophisticated and significantly less expensive, right? But one important thing is we go and look at the specs for here. I can get it up to 432 degrees Fahrenheit, which is above the temperature for hard crack caramel. So you can temper chocolate in this if it ever became necessary. You could use it as a chocolate melter in case it became necessary. You can do all the things it doesn't do marshmallows. I don't think there's nothing to do that, but it's you can get an 8-gallon, roughly 30-liter machine, which is what I would get for production. I can produce large quantities of things that I'm going to incorporate into chocolate items or sell on their own. Right? I can make pastry cream. I could put together the base for making ice cream. Right? That will become important someplace else. All of these sorts of things. I could take fresh seasonal fruit and reduce it into fruit purees for use all over the place. All sorts of things that can be done, right? At 30 liters at a time. And once you've developed a recipe, you can program the recipe in and it will do it for you. And this is maybe, depending upon the size, it's going to be like a third the price of a Robo Cubo, maybe half the price of a Robo Cubo to do that. Now, if I want relatively small quantities, so micro batch, this Hot Mix Gastro Pro, it's under $2,000 as I recall, last I looked, but it does marshmallows, it will do caramel. I don't think it gets hard enough for hot crack caramel. It's roughly somewhere between 1 or 2 liters. And so there are many, many things I can do. It says caramelize. So I wanted to caramelize nuts. I believe I could caramelize nuts in it. So this is a relatively small machine. Now, if my requirements for only 1 or 2 liters at a time, then I wouldn't require the Cucci Mix, right? But in my business, the way I'm thinking about it, I would like the ability to have one of these things for larger cooking. Now, if I do want an induction cooktop, because there are lots of reasons to own an induction cooktop, then this machine developed in conjunction between Breville and PolyScience, which was a hardware company which is big into molecular gastronomy. If you want to, you could put a 2-quart or 4-quart pot on this, and not only are you measuring the amount of heat that's coming up from the cooking service, but you can put a temperature probe into it. So you can say heat until it gets to this temperature and hold at that temperature, which is really, really important, right? It is a little bit expensive. There are less expensive versions of this. I don't know. I have one, and even with I have 2 different induction cooktops. This is the one that I would get, right? Because I want the ability for the precise temperature control necessary to handle like thermosetting gels, right? Which if you're working with a certain kinds of recipes you'd want. I'd also use the induction cooktop and the Gastro Pro to cook ingredients which were going to be used in other things. So I'm putting together 4 or 5 different elements. I'm making an ingredient which is going to be part of the mise en place for a larger product. And so I would want to have all 3 of these ideally. If space and other things, I would just go with the Gastro and the Control Freak, right? And save myself $30,000. But as I say, I could probably I'm sure that I could make and sell $30,000 worth of product in one season with this, right? Because of the flexibility of it. Okay. Now, the other thing I want is, I did cache this earlier, is I want a small combi oven. And so this is a made in the United States company called Combo Therm. It is a 6-rack half pan oven, really, really compact, right? And so I could use this for roasting cocoa beans, right? Many people use combi ovens for roasting cocoa beans. No reason not to. But I can use it for roasting nuts, right? Which I'm going to want a nut roaster, and this is really, really good. But I'm also going to use this for baking brownies. I'm going to be using it for all sorts of baking items because I'm a chocolate maker. What can I make with the chocolate that I make? And I can make as much or more money with the chocolate in a brownie than I can selling the chocolate itself. I could make biscotti. So I'm going to want to have a stand mixer in here, obviously. I could make biscotti. I could cook off the biscotti and I could drizzle them in chocolate. There are lots of things that I can do. And so I would have a small combi oven. Don't necessarily need a full-size oven for what it is that I'm doing, but having a small compact oven. Again, a combi oven, so I can put steam in there. I believe this is an auto cook cycle. It's programmable, so once you get a recipe, you can just set it and forget it. You don't necessarily need to get this brand. There are other brands that do same thing. Some of them are less expensive, some of them more expensive. This is an example of what it is that I want in my kitchen, right? Right. And then I want a dedicated coffee roaster. So this is a small shop roaster. Mike, you roast coffee on a daily basis. This is a relatively small one. It's roughly 2 kilos per batch. It's a small roaster, but when you go take a look at what it's a fluid bread roaster, it's drum roasting, convection, conduction. It's got everything you want, right, in a small shop roaster. 2 kilos at a time. I'm roasting, fresh roasting all the coffee that I'm going to be using to make coffee in the shop. And if I have enough capacity, I can sell I don't use, right, to customers, or I could take orders for it. There are lots of ways to generate revenue. And if for some reason this size shop roaster was too small, they make another tabletop size roaster one step up. So I'd want one of those. If I'm doing chocolate covered cocoa beans, or for example, or chocolate covered coffee beans, I'd like to fresh roast my own coffee beans, right? If I'm incorporating coffee into the chocolate by refining the coffee into the chocolate, I'm going to want fresh roasted coffee beans, roasted to a specific roast for what it is that I'm doing, right? And so that is one reason to have my own coffee roaster. But I want to be able to sell coffee drinks to people who walk in to my shop. And having fresh roasted coffee in the shop is a huge thing. Now, if you need these people, if you don't have ducting capability, these people have a filter afterburner, which is 0 odor, 0 smoke. And that's an option for these roasters. Not bad for a retail environment, because chances are you're going to have to duct a roaster no matter what. Okay, so that's it. I have all the equipment that I need, or all the big ticket items for making chocolate, right? And for making the components for confectionery. So things for make, I don't have to go into detail. So this is all I've got, or this is all I need, right? Well, big ticket items. So the equipment for making finished products. Number one, um, rather than having three tempering machines, right? So one for dark, one for milk, one for white. I'm just going to have one tempering machine. I like this particular brand. It's KeyChalk. Their Infinity series, in part because it's a 70 kilogram working bowl, right? But it will keep the chocolate in temper down to about 5 kilograms in the bottom of the bowl, which is incredibly unusual for a continuous tempering machine on this size, right? You can also work it with as little as 15 kilograms of chocolate in the bowl. Now, I would not use the depositing heads that they build. I would use a depositing head from Fairbeck Engineering, right? Because I think that the work that Daniel does on these making the best depositing heads for the craft chocolate maker in the market. I think the only way to do much better than that is to go to a volumetric or pneumatic depositor. However that's going to get done. So that would I do. These are also, they're low, so they don't have this column. You know, if you look at way Selmy and Gammy and FBM, the way they're built, these machines are taller than people are, right? So these stay low, which means that you can take off the spout here, you can take it off at the base, and you can open up the entire thing, and they actually sell a brush that you could use for cleaning this out. So the changeover between different kinds of chocolate is relatively simple. So this is a continuous tempering machine. They make a batch tempering machine, which has got an auger, and it's designed to handle large inclusions up to 10 millimeters in diameter. The smaller augers, right, are like 3 millimeters in diameter, maximum maybe 10 to 15%, right, total in the inclusion, right? But this will handle a much larger conclusion. And there is an optional pump that you can get to pump from this machine into that machine, which I think is pretty cool. And so I would use this as also as a melting tank. So I've got a melting tank. I can set it up so if I need to have a lot of melted chocolate, I can keep it and keep the continuous tempering machine running for long periods of time. Now, because I'm doing a lot of things with my chocolate, I'm not necessarily focusing on bars alone. I have not included the automatic molding line for this, right? It's another 10 or 12,000 pounds, 12,000 pounds or something like that. But I've decided that for what it is that I'm doing, I don't need the bar molding line because I'm not focusing on bars as the number one thing. What I do want, however, is a small enrobing line. And this is a small tabletop enrobing line. It comes with an 11 kilo. It's from ICB in, I forget where I see that, Belgium, I think. And it's a complete line. And it's not the highest throughput line in the world, but that's not what it is that I'm looking for. I would primarily do, if I was doing bonbon, which I would like to do, I would do slabbed ganaches, slabbed caramels. I'm enrobing candied fruits and things like that. Maybe I'm enrobing baked goods, which come out of the oven, right? I'm specifically baking things for doing this. This is a very, very small item. And it's two parts. The tempering machine is on its own. The enrobing belt is on its own, and you can put one over the top of the other, and you can put this on a cart and move it around. So it's very, very flexible in that respect. It's tiny, right? But I'm not doing 1,000 pieces an hour. That's not what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking for some other product that I can make, which is going to use the chocolate that I'm making, right? So that's there. And then I want a coating pan. These are the drawings for the coating pan that I'm working on with this Turkish supplier, Oflaz Mechanics. This is the specific drawing for the 7.5 kilo pan that we're working on. It's going to be around 6,000. I think it's $6,000, including heat and cold, which is really, really good. But we're also working on a 20 kilo pan, which in the 20 kilo pan is the size that would interest me in doing it. But I want a coating pan, right? Because I want to do panned items, panned coffee beans, chocolate covered coffee beans, chocolate covered nuts, chocolate covered molten milk balls, chocolate covered lots of things, right? And this is what I would do. And then we're building this in a way so that you could replace one pan. So this is a smooth pan. If you wanted to replace it with a ribbed pan, it would be very easy to replace it with a ribbed pan. So that's what I would want, right? So there are other coating pans at this size, 7.5 kilos, where they don't offer the ability to change pans quite as easily, um, and they don't offer heat and cold, hot and cold air. They'll blow in ambient, and so um, those are things that I know that I want: hot and cold air, and the ability to swap out pans relatively easily. We're actually also looking at a design which would enable you to swap out the 7.5 kilo pan for a 20 kilo pan, right? So run both of them on the same motor base, which would be a first, as near as I know, in this industry. So that's what it is that I want. And finally, here's another thing that might surprise people. I want a Paco Jet. Right? I want a Paco Jet because I want to get into micro batch ice cream for the summer. I want to create community supported ice cream, not community supported agriculture. Like I sign up and every month or every week I get a box at my door of whatever it is from the farm they just happen to have a lot of that week. Community supported ice cream. I have to give a shout out to Sarah Hart of Alma Chocolate in Portland, Oregon. Alma is no longer in business, but I was good friends with Sarah. Um, and she is the one who came up with this idea. So she set up a community supported ice cream program. She had people sign up in advance. She financed the purchase of the Paco Jet, all of the Paco Jet beakers, as well as the blast chiller and the holding refrigerator that she needed to do all of this work, and funded it in advance the first season, and then sold additional ice cream. But you can make ice cream and gelato and sorbets and everything in this machine, right? And then she did it again the second season. So she got people to pay upfront to be able to come in once a month, get whatever the flavor of the month was of the ice cream, right? Right? They had to come into the shop to pick it up. It's ice cream, right? But they paid for it in advance. Community supported ice cream. She used local ingredients. It was a great idea. That idea is something that I think would be great. So you don't have to use a Paco Jet. I don't think that the Ninja Creamy is up to this, although you could probably buy 5 Ninja Creamies for the price of this. There's an advantage of working with a device which is designed for food service, especially if you're going to make product for retail sale. So good thing to know. And by the way, there are generally loopholes in most states' dairy handling licenses that if you're producing small amounts for sale and consumption on premises, rather than having somebody ship it into you, you don't need to have a special dairy handling license. Good to know, right? When you're doing this. So I did it again. Sorry about that, guys. I am excited, and I move my cursor to a place I shouldn't. So I want a Paco Jet. I want a Paco Jet so that what I can do is I can make micro batch ice cream. I can do this. I can change up the flavors very, very easily. I can make 3 or 4 flavors. It's limited only by the number of beakers that I have on hand. And the other thing is, what I would do is I would make ice cream based upon, if I had seconds, if I was doing bonbons and there was a second, or it got to where I didn't feel I was comfortable, I just rework it into ice cream. Not a bad idea, right? Right. So just, I'm thinking about, I want something which is cold. Now, the other thing I could use this for, and I really haven't thought about it, is if I'm selling coffee, I can make my own gelato for affogatos. And so I could take chocolate that I'm making, I could make the chocolate into a gelato base, turn it into a chocolate ice cream, and then make a chocolate coffee affogato. So there's a lot of flexibility in here, and I'm thinking about how can I maximize the number of things that I can make with the equipment I have. If I've got this, of course, and then what I've got is something like this, I could be making a marshmallow, which is the perfect consistency for putting on top of a mocha or a coffee, right? So think about the way these things work. I mean, I want to create like this amazing retail environment where there's lots of stuff going on. right? Oh, I hadn't thought about it. So one of the things that you could do, and one of the things I want to do with this 3-roll mill, I could actually take chocolate, which is coming out of one of my refiner conches. I could run it through the 3-roll mill and it would turn it into a powder, and I could use the powder as my hot chocolate mix, right? So I could make a hot chocolate or a mocha in my cafe using the chocolate, right? It's a very, very fine powder. It would be very, very quick to dissolve, which is one, or melt into the hot milk or hot water or hot coffee, whatever it is that you're doing. So that's pretty cool. So again, flexibility in all the things that I'm doing. So, right. Anything else in terms of this? I think that's what I want. That's what I want to do. Um, Equipment for packaging. So this is a small, they're made in Vermont. This is a small weigh pack machine. And so I could put powder in here. I could put chocolate covered coffee beans. I can put anything, and I can weigh them into a zipper pouch, right? And this fits on a tabletop. Although it's a floor mounted version here, there's a tabletop version in here. It's got a great range in terms of, you know, how much it can dose into a pouch at any particular time. And so I want to focus, if I can, on things in terms of products for sale that I can put into a pouch. And that also includes the chocolate bars. I would probably figure out a way to, I wouldn't problem. I would figure out a way to seal the chocolate bars. I don't want a full size flow wrap machine, but something which would provide some sort of environmental seal, and then put it into a some sort of pouch. So I'm thinking about maximizing what it is that I have in terms of reducing the quantity of different styles of packaging that I hold in house, and so finding things which I can finding things um, which I can dose using this. Now, there are smaller, less expensive versions which you can buy on Amazon, something to consider. But this is something that will do high volume, all right? Which I thought would be a good thing to have. Again, I want one of these things. This is what comes to mind. I did recommend a larger one for my ultimate workshop. There are less expensive ones. I don't know that they are as robust, and so you might spend a third of the price, but you may need to buy. May break down, right, or may not have other. They may not meet other usage constraints. So just to consider. And I didn't say if I've got something like this, I'm going to want a horizontal band sealer for the tops of the pouches. There's lots of support equipment in here that I haven't talked about. So I haven't talked about everything. For example, in the kitchen, you're going to want a stand mixer. So I haven't talked about which stand mixer. If I'm doing slab ganaches, I'm probably going to want to have a guitar cutter, right? Or if I'm doing slab caramels, I'm going to want to have a caramel cutter. I haven't talked about any of those things, right? Those are relatively inexpensive. Really relatively inexpensive kinds of things. So I just wanted, again, to sort of reiterate that point. One thing I thought would be very, very cool is that using something like this die cutter and a known bar mold, what I could do is I could do short run customized paper boxes, right? Or paper wrappers, paper envelopes. So I could run a piece of paper through a printer, then cut the paper on this, fold it, and then put the bar into this. I wouldn't want to do thousands of them this way, right? But if what I need to do is I need to do, 100, right? And I want to do short run custom bars for somebody or wrappers for somebody, would be a way to do it. And so I've loved this idea from the very beginning. All you do is you go and get somebody to build the die for you. There are many people who build the die. It would have the outer cut marks. It would also have the folds in it. So you get that stuff done. And again, if you've got a large enough printer, you can run this through a printer, and it may be pre-printed, and what you're doing is you're only printing the customization. So you may get 4-color pre-printed, and then you're doing black and white customization on it, and then you're doing this very, very specific kind of envelope style fold or something like that. I'm thinking something relatively simple. This would be one thing that I would add to my itinerary, not my itinerary, my kit in my shop specifically for short run customization of products that can fit. Right now, right. Um, People may or may not know the name Rhonda Cave and Ronnie Sue in New York City. Let me get rid of that translation box. Um, but when she was starting out, she was in the Essex Street Market, which was open air, and we ended up purchasing a cooling cabinet from a company called Irinox. And she didn't have room for a temperature controlled crystallization cabinet separately from all our other things, but she needed a work table. And so what we did is we got her a work table, and underneath it was a crystallization cabinet. So this goes from 0C to 15C. 15C is the upper end for crystallization, so you keep it at the upper end. You can get 2, 3, and 4-door versions. This is a stainless steel worktop. So if you're doing things, you can take the tray and put the tray into the cooling cabinet once the tray is full. And so if I wanted stainless steel working tables and it wasn't concerned with storage underneath, I can mix and match them with these. So if I was getting cooling cabinets, this is what I would get. They do so. These are EU style, EU size. You can get them in. You can get adapters for US size pans. And then if you're going to be making ice cream in a Pacojet, you need a blast chiller. And so this is a relatively small blast chiller to get the product down to the temperature that you need. And then, so it's a blast slash shock freezer. So rapid cooling for very small crystals in what you're doing. And then you'd want a separate holding fridge. So once you took it out of the blast chiller and you had processed it, as they called pacotized it, you'd want to put it in the holding fridge. So which is at a much higher temperature than this. Um, but the Technomac brand, very, very highly regarded, relatively inexpensive. They don't have all the control electronics that Irinox does, and so they are kind of significantly less expensive than Irinox products. And then finally, I want something which is going to make cleanup a breeze. And I talked about this, although it's a lot, $5,000 sounds like a lot. One of the things that I can do with this is I can clean the floors, I can clean the belt of the enrober, but also because of the high pressure dry steam nozzle, what I can do is I can go and use it to clean and sterilize the insides of my refiner conches. So I can take the entire assembly out of the middle. I can go wash that. I can put it in the dishwasher if I have a dishwasher that's big enough, right? But I can take the wand attachment off the steam and I can put it in here and I can clean and sterilize everything in here, right? So that's why I want this. This machine, right, provides me an insane amount of flexibility when it comes to cleaning. All of the surfaces without any chemicals. So it has a UVC light, so it's killing anything which is in the water. It generates dry steam, it generates wet steam. I can do vacuum only, I can do vacuum only with steam. All of this kind of stuff was done in one unit. Now, there may be less expensive versions of this. There probably are. This was a company, this was a brand, this was a product that I saw in use at ISM when I was in Cologne in 2018, and noticed that it is HACCP certified, right? As also certified NSF for sanitation in the food industry. So if you've got some sort of health inspector who's going, well, is that NSF certified? You go, no, but I have this NSF certified sanitized cleaning device, so I can make sure that everything I get is cleaned, right, by a device which is itself NSF certified. All depends upon the health inspector whether they're going to buy that or not, but it is an important thing to consider. It's very high pressure, so 8 bars, 117 psi, dry steam. It's a fabulous device and what it is that I want. Again, $5,000 for a vacuum sounds like a lot, but when I think about right, can I clean? Um, can I, if I ever had to unplug my shock freezer and sanitize the interior surfaces, I can do that. If I need to go and clean the interior surfaces of my coating pan, right? So melt everything with high temperature steam, and then vacuum out everything from the beginning, and then sanitize it afterwards. I can clean this, right, very, very quickly, right? Do I want to clean the working bowl and the belt and everything that's associated with this? That's what I'm going to do, right? If I want to clean the interior of this, of my tempering machines, I can do that. You get the idea, right? Um, and because there is this sanitization capability, I can get the temperature hot enough. What I can do is I can do a good job of reducing cross contamination, right? So I can denature all of the proteins, perhaps in any soy lecithin I may be using. I could denature a lot of milk proteins. Now, I'm not saying that this will mean that you can say dairy free, right? But if you're saying you have a product which is processed on machines that handle dairy and nuts, tree nuts, what you can do is you can say, and you could get this tested, that by cleaning this way, what you can do is you can reduce the risk of cross contamination compared with other forms of cleaning, right? And dry steam, it's once the steam it's dry. You don't have to wait minutes or hours for the water to evaporate. So pretty cool. Now you have to make sure that the temperature won't melt bearings and any plastic parts that are in there. So that is a concern, but that's something that you can contact the manufacturer and take care of. But cleaning the inside bowl of this, right, very, very quickly, right? And then, as I say, cleaning the rollers, cleaning the interiors, I want all that stuff. And so that's what I have to say, right, on the budget workshop. Now, Mike, I'm sorry if what I did, if you're still still watching, still listening, that it didn't meet your idea of what a budget workshop is, right? Because if you didn't pay close attention to the way I put this together, one of the things I specifically said is my goal is not to look at kitting out my workshop for the least amount of money. So let's think about how I might do that, right? So rather than getting this 15-kilo roaster, they do make a smaller one. They do make a 7-kilo roaster. So that might be a way to save a whole bunch of money. I do want to have a real roaster. I'm not going to use BMORs. If I'm really thinking about the budget, I'm going to go use a combi oven, right? If you only have budget for one item, right, the combi oven is the way to do it. You can roast cocoa in it, but you also have something that you can use to bake stuff. I say this more often. You could probably make more money putting your chocolate into a brownie recipe and selling brownies than you can actually selling them as chocolate bars. So if you only have room for one oven, then a combi oven is the way to go. I'd like to have a real roaster, so I can do that, right? I would be happy to start off with just one R15, right? So I can do 15 kilos. I can do 15 kilos. It's a refiner conch. I can do a batch. I can do a batch in well under 24 hours, right? I can put Teflon rollers in here. I can put stone rollers in here. I can do nut pastes, and I can open up the entire thing, pull out the roller sets to swap them out and to wash them, right? So I could say, okay, I'm doing a budget workshop, 1R15, right? That would be the way to go. They make a smaller version than the MI30. They make the MI10. I would pair it with that. Again, if I'm going to get one of these Conversi machines, I would think about getting one of the Conversi cracker winnowers because they handle nuts. Making nut paste, small mobile, gianduja, right? Things like that, right? It's another item. You can put chocolate in it, dark chocolate, milk chocolate. Put them with the nuts. You can do nuts only. This is if you can multi-layer them and make cremino, right? All sorts of things that you can do. But if I were to think about the R15, that would be a great way to go. And then pairing it with, I think that the 90 is from 100 grams to 2.5 kilos. 2.5 kilos, that might actually be enough if what I'm doing is I'm doing the R15. So, okay, I've just saved an insane amount of money, right? So I got an M10, I've got an R15, right? So I've got a much, much smaller roaster. That would be a way to get through this. Now, I, I can probably get an aquarium chiller for the water, for a recirculating chiller. And obviously the 3-roll mill, it's not something that I would consider for this budget. I just take that out of it. And then I would find out if there's enough, if I could also roast coffee in this. Right? I may be able to. Although this is designed for, although these particular items are designed for cocoa, I would find out if I could also use them for coffee. So again, forget the coochie mix, $30,000, right? I could have 1 or 2 of these Hot Mix Pros. You store the recipes on SD cards, and so you develop a recipe in one and you can move it over to another. Again, they're like $1,200 a piece. And so they are really, really versatile machines. So I would, if I was really thinking about a budget, I would not get the coochie mix. I would definitely get the induction cooktop. And I would splurge on I know I can get an induction cooktop for under $100. I want this one just for precise temperature control, because if I'm working in confectionery items, if I'm doing a thermoset gel or anything like that where precise temperature control is, I'm doing, caramel where I want to be within a precise degree or something like that, I want something like this. If I had to have either one of these things, I might just go with the Control Freak, and then use my stand mixer for doing marshmallows and things like that. But I think there's value in having the Hot Mix Pro. So I've kicked $30,000 off. This is 15,000 euros. You can see we're saving some money. You can take this approach and pare it down and make it work, right? In this particular place, I just get the continuous tempering machine. I still get the Fairbank Engineering depositing head. I don't get the the AX, or the MX, which is the batch tempering machine. I need to figure out something else to be used as a melter. What I may be able to do is use my combi oven, set it at a very low temperature, and use it as a melter, using hotel pans. Right, that would be something to do. There, other ways to go about doing that. I would still want to have this small, um, enrobing machine. Again, I can take 10 grams of chocolate, or 5 grams of chocolate, put it around 12 or 15 grams of a milk chocolate ganache, and I can make $3 a piece off them, right? So I just think from a return on investment perspective, having an enrobing belt. But if you didn't want to do any kind of enrobed items, get rid of it. You could do shell molded flood and scrape out of the tempering machine, right? That becomes an option. So there's flexibility there. I would like a 7.5 kilo panning machine. And if you didn't want to go the ice cream route, because if you're going to do ice cream, you're going to need a blast chiller and a holding fridge. So you can just take, all in, like maybe $10,000 out of the budget by saying I'm not going to do ice cream. You could go to Amazon and get a scaling machine, much lower capacity, spend under $1,000. This is under $1,000. Go with pouches as your primary. So there are ways to go take this approach and say, how do I pare it down and actually make this work for far less money? If I had to settle on one particular thing that I wouldn't want to give up out of any of these things, I think it's this. This is the machine that made me rethink my entire approach to this when I remembered it. I don't remember exactly what triggered this, but thinking about so for a really, really, if I was doing startup and I didn't have a lot of money, right? And I needed to think about where I'm spending the money, and I wanted to think about efficiency and throughput, right? In terms of chocolate making. The ability with the R15, and let's go over here, right? So we got this R15, and I can blow it up, right? Is, again, I've got Teflon rollers and I have stainless steel rollers. right? One is optimized for working with cocoa. The other one is optimized for working with nuts, right? This is self-emptying. So I just open up this valve and it empties out of this. But I do have a little tasting valve here. I just unscrew this, right? And a little bit of it oozes out so I can test it along the way, which I think is one of the great things that they did here, right? But importantly, number one, if I could put this front of house and people just could watch it working, I think that's really, really cool. Or maybe not front of house, but visible from the front of house. I can remove this door and I can take everything out of it and it's really easy to clean, right? So that would be where I would start. If I start with that, and it has an integrated conch, so it's a refiner and a conch, so I don't need a separate conch, or I don't need to spend a long time in the machine to produce product. Having done that, what I would say is, all right, if I'm going to do R15, 70% cocoa of this, I need about what? About 10 kilos of nibs, somewhere around in there. So if I've got a 2.5 kilo roaster, I need 5 roasts to get to 10 kilos. So maybe I want a slightly bigger roaster so I can do this in fewer roasts. Right? So that's the trade-off. How many roasts does it take to fill this? But I could do a batch a day. I could easily do one batch a day. So I could do 75 kilos a week in this machine, any combination of milk, dark, and white in this one machine, right? With really, really easy changeover and cleaning. That's pretty cool, right? So having said that, what decision am I going to make? Well, I'm going to make the decision to size my roaster to this. I want something larger, right? Because at some point, putting another R15 in here, relatively inexpensive to do. And again, you can get an inexpensive chiller to handle the water for this. Doubles production capacity, but you don't want to spend all your week roasting in order to fill it, right? If you're using a roaster or using a combi oven, that 6-pan combi oven would probably do enough nibs to enough beans if you cracked and winnowed in one roast to fill this machine. Maybe, right? Maybe 2 roasts to get it done. So think about those kinds of things. But once you've made that decision, right? You've got the small version of this. You've got the M10 again because it handles nuts, and you're going to be producing nut paste and other things in this as well. The one thing I would not get rid of in this is that expensive steam cleaner because of the sanitation and cleaning capabilities of this. So where else am I going in terms of doing this? So yeah, no, I've just taken this budget, and so this is going to be, I think, I'd have to go look. I mean, I've actually, I suppose what you could do is if you really wanted to save a lot of money, you'd get this tempering machine. Right, it's an 11-kilo tempering machine. You've got an enrober belt. You may be able to put a Fairback Engineering depositing head on. Not entirely sure. I mean, if you really needed to take these ideas and pare them down to the minimum, you could do it. Right. But what you now need to do, and this is something that I was going to spend some time talking about, and so I have a costing worksheet, and so I'm saying if I can do 280 kilograms of chocolate production a week, and I'm producing 40 weeks a year, and I've got a blended average price of 90 kilos for product with the chocolate I make, I've got $1 million gross income business, right? Now you can then, so I started thinking about, I want to, right, and that's just on the chocolate stuff, right? This is a costing sheet for bar production. This is a costing sheet to say, what is the mix of wholesale and retail? How do I make money doing that? Excuse me. This is actually talking about how much is it cost to use the machines, right? There's a big worksheet where I can go and start thinking about which are going to be more cost effective in terms of kilograms of production per week, compared with how much I'm spending on them. You can calculate bar capacity in your tempering machine. You can then also calculate how much you need in terms of what your enrobing throughput is. So just so this is there. If you wanted a copy, just contact me. I'm not going to put it in the worksheet, but if you want a copy, or join me on Sunday at the AMA, and we can talk about it then. Right? So, and that's what I have to say. I hope you found it interesting, Mike. Again, still, if you're listening or watching, I hope that by starting off at this higher level and then working back and paring things down to the minimum that would be required, you get a sense for how you could take the recommendations that I'm making and actually say, okay, here's a budget that I can work with, right? Um, and then you can go in and do this. So you don't need to spend, again, the $1 million that I spent earlier this week. You don't need to spend the couple $100,000 that I was doing here, probably. You can do this for significantly less by following my logic and how I'm selecting the machines, why I chose the machines I did, which machines that I chose. Suggest that there are a bunch of alternatives which might be less expensive, but think about what you want to produce. I mean, the goal that the number one fundamental thing, right, is understand what you can make with the chocolate that you make rather than just focusing on bars, right? There's all there. It's, single origin craft chocolate bars is one of the most crowded parts of the marketplace, and differentiation is a real challenge, right? If you're putting together a retail space where you can bring people in and engage with them, have products that they can purchase, a wide range of products that they can purchase, I think this is the way to think about that style of production, right? And be able to scale. I mean, one of the interesting things I haven't pointed out is that you should be able to go, for example, from, right, a recipe in the R7 straight to the recipe in the R60. And the only thing that's going to change is the amount of time required to do it, right? And you can do that in a small melanger to a bigger melanger as well, but you can't go that from a melanger into a ball mill, right? Or a melanger into a universal. So having this, you could go very small and have a growth path would be is a great thing to think about doing. Um, you know, one of these R60s, the footprint is smaller than a 70 kilo, 150 pound melanger. It's lighter. It uses less energy. So, and so I just think about, people tend to think about CapEx, but they don't think about total cost of ownership. What are the energy costs associated with this? This requires space, floor space. What is the cost per rentable square foot? Usable square foot, not rentable, but usable square foot in the space that you're renting, right? What are energy bills? What is the cost of electricity? What is the cost of gas where you're living? So you need to think about all of these. How much heat is this putting out into the space, right? What does it do to increase your HVAC load? All of these things need to be factored in, right? And so considering the budget, the way most people think about budget, right, is is problematic in my opinion. And so again, what I really wanted to do this week in going over kitting out a budget workshop was to give you a different way of thinking about it, right? A different way of the way every other craft chocolate maker has been taught to think about how to make chocolate, right? That there are different production pathways. They're equally valid if what they produce is a finished product that um, you find acceptable, right? Um, and that there's, you know, people say it's got to be stone on stone in a melanger. Well, that's not entirely true, right? There are other things that you can do. People do metal on metal, and if you're talking about what it is the conversion does, there's not the kind of wear that you have that's associated with either balls or blades in a ball mill or in a universal. So perhaps there's a way to go think about it. So think about all of these things. Go and examine all of your assumptions. Say, just like, forget the only way to do this is I need to do a melanger, right? And listen, fabulous businesses have been built, from the ground up using melangers. I'm not, if that's the way you want to go that way, right? But think about what it means in terms of what is the critical point, not from a HACCP perspective, but what is the critical point in terms of your production, and then work outwards from there. How does that one piece of equipment, right, determine all of the other things that you need to do? So if you buy a 70 kilo, 150-pound melanger, you're talking about 3 to 4 days to, if you're doing a really an aggressive chocolate, um, 3 to 4 days in that. So 6 day weeks, you've got at most 2 batches, right? That's what you're doing. And you've got cleaning, right? If you're doing changeover from one to another, think about all those things, right? How much, again, right? Re-examine your assumptions, right? I think that's really important. And yeah, no, Mike, if you want to join us on Sunday, again, it's 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. If you're a Chocolate Life member, you can go look at the February member newsletter. There's the link to the Google Meet for this coming Sunday, the 16th. Annual members AMA. You can be just a regular member, a free member. If you're watching this, you can join for free. You'll get the monthly newsletter. You have to be a member in order to read it, and the link is only available to members. So you can, just ask me anything you want. That's the whole idea about cocoa and chocolate, and we'll take care of it. But that's it for today for me. This was a lot of fun for me, right? I started off, right, thinking that I might do this in a week, got a change in my schedule. And then partway through this, what I said is, I want to commit to a full service retail environment. So it's a chocolate/coffee shop, which is also doing bakery items, and maybe some other things. I'm not entirely sure. But what does that mean? What am I going to do? And I want to run a business year round and profitably. I want to know what is the mix of products that I'm going to make. So chocolate, canned goods, and robed items. I want to have something for the summer. So ice cream. I want, if I'm doing coffee, which I think is, again, coffee and tea, dessert things associated with that. If I've got an oven, I've got baked goods, what can I do with them? So I was thinking about this holistically. How would I go about creating something which is more likely to become a profitable business, right? And that was the basis for all of the decisions that I made, starting with how much chocolate can I produce in a given amount of time? What kind of equipment is it going to take? What's the budget for those things? Right? And from there, right, it all sort of blossomed. And it was a chance to go revisit some assumptions that I had made. I originally started off with an entirely different mix of equipment and then redid it yesterday. As I was putting things into this, going back and forth, contacting people. It was a lot of fun. I just love these kinds of exercises. If you're one of my consulting clients, you want to know more about this, this is the kind of stuff that I do for my clients, is work through their assumptions and then try to get them into the most amenable production pathway that will meet their production requirements. And with that, it's Friday. It's Valentine's Day. Again, I hope that everybody has somebody that they can share this Valentine's Day with, somebody special, and to say, I have no idea what the next episode of Pod Safe Chocolate is going to be about. I do know it's this coming Tuesday, but everyone, have a great weekend. And remember, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you need to reevaluate your life choices. And until the next time, everybody, ciao.